Order. First up.
Brown is in here. I thought you
Turning it right over. All right.
Right over.
All right. So all the council members have gotten their budget books. I'm sure you've studied them and read them and know them by heart by now.
Oh, certainly.
What I'm going to do is kind of flip through. We did have some comments and concerns that were brought up by a council member who's unable to attend. I went back today and went through and kind of incorporated some of those. So as I'm moving through, I'm not going to plan on doing it line item by line item because we probably all want to get out of here before tomorrow. So I'm going to hit the highlights. If at any point in time, any questions or any discussion arises, we can certainly stop and address those.
No, geez.
What's going on?
I don't know.
Oh, you got to log in.
No, it's got one of those fancy security things on there.
That thing gets there like every 10 minutes.
Nah. That's liquor.
Wow, how old are you?
Your age?
Looking around the room.
Old enough to retire.
You're in the top 10.
Well, we'll see. Yes, it does. So starting out with the general fund, just as a reminder, I mean, there's a number of actual departments in there, but primarily admin, cemetery, parks, and police. On the summary, I'm not going to go through all those line items, but with this fiscal year, well, with the proposed fiscal year 25-26, we're looking at a $70,000 deficit between revenues and expenditures. Going through the fund balance, we will end up $66,000 below the fund balance. And that was trimming a lot of what the department heads asked, and basically the way it happens is we give the department heads budgets as well as annual operating as well as capital. They submit them back to me, and Alyssa is working on the revenues. If the expenditures are less than revenues, it's a pretty easy process, but a lot of times it's a little bit heavy on the other side. So we will go through, and I'll sit down with the department heads and say, no, we kind of need to trim you here and there. So there was a lot of trimming to do, even to get at a spot where we're only $66,000 below our target fund balance. And I think council's aware the storm hit us for over $600,000. We probably still have some expenses to do down on Mears just before it turns into Zeller. I still call it the Zeller curve. And in the general fund highlights, again, I'm asking council to be very tight and very frugal with this fiscal year so we build those fund balances back up. So there's not a whole lot of highlights throughout this budget through its entirety from top to bottom, but there are things that I will highlight. One is the fireworks contribution. We continue to make that contribution. The senior millage, it's going to be about 17.8. I think we use this year's numbers. You know, that kind of fluctuates a little bit. And not that you're locked into Agewell City Senior Center and back, but that's what we did for this year. That will at least be the starting point for next year's allocation. And the Mears retirement funding, we're at 86% funded for our retirement, which is fantastic when you consider there's a ton of cities out there that are well below 50%. So we're actually in a good position, but what we have been doing is accelerating and reducing that gap by $100,000 a year for the last few years. I think admin is fully paid off, DPW is close, and police is not as close as the other two. So we've been doing that for probably 6 or 7 years now. Some items, council's got a whole list of items that weren't included in this budget. So obviously you can go back to that budget letter and ask about some of those items. But City Hall security cameras and ADA compliance items, that's $101,000 that is not included in the budget. Sidewalk repairs are not included in the general fund budget. And I think I've mentioned before, there are other ways to fund that if that's a pressing need for the city council. Almost $500,000 in park improvements. The smart buoy, we just got a letter late last week from the White Lake Association asking us to cover half the cost of the programming for that smart buoy system, splitting it with Montague. The two cities have less shoreline than the townships along the White Lake, but I guess we're a little more generous, or at least in their ideas. So that's not included. The park improvements were not included. I'm just going off the master plan and capital improvement plans as to when these things are supposed to be implemented. But again, you're looking at probably close to $600,000 in items in the general fund that we just can't afford this year. In the general fund, I know there's been a lot of discussion about the police department and staffing. I do want to point out, because there's been misconceptions or misunderstanding of the statement I had in last year's fiscal year. This is pulled right from it, is that we will also look to reduce the staff size. I never promised, I never said we will. That is a council decision. That was kind of my observation at where the police department has gone. The budget that you have before you is back to fully staffing the 8 employees. There are some changes that we're looking to implement. The biggest is from a lieutenant detective to a sergeant detective. That would reduce the cost because a lieutenant has a higher pay grade than a sergeant. And a new patrol officer filling that 8th position will get less money than, I think all of our patrol officers are at a 5, pay scale 5.
Yes.
Well, no, we've got one that's still relatively new. So when you start an employee in a pay scale, they're always at the lower level. And we've always done this. Every time we've had an opening, anywhere in the city of Whitehall since I've been here, we don't just put out an ad and fill the position. We'll have a discussion with staff, the department heads, and with council as we go along the way. And we just kind of decide, do we just want to fill this position? Do we want to massage it a little bit? Do we want to combine two? Do we want to break them up? So it's just common for us to go through this exercise.
When will we be making comments on this as you go through?
Whenever you want.
Because you led us to believe last year that was going to happen.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, there was a misunderstanding. I never led you to believe that. It's written that we'll look at it. It's still your decision. If I'm adding staff or reducing staff, it's still your decision in that regard.
Do we make that decision now then?
You can make it as part of the budget work session, and I would prefer that because next week, when we give it to the council, we would rather not have, I mean, it's cleaner if all of the decisions have been made and we give you a final budget for adoption.
You know, that statement, whether you meant it or not, or whatever, it talked about how the other cities our size are 30 to 35% of the budget. Now we're going up to 49% of the budget, the total budget for the police department?
Well, and it's hard to just do flat comparisons. And I don't know if Roger or Brandon want to address those. But you got to keep in mind that a large chunk of money that would go into our general fund, TIFA, LDFA, and Brownfield, is separated out. So if we put that money back in, which would be a lot of money, then that would actually reduce our percent of the portion of the total general fund. Most cities don't have, not every city has any one of those three. Very few have all three. Some will have multiple TIFAs.
So you go by dollars, and we're still 50% higher than Montague.
Well, and Montague's kind of a unique situation because the money that we're capturing through TIFA and LDFA, that stuff is going directly as an infusion into their general fund. So they have an additional $600,000 approximately that's going into their general fund. You take that away and you have it go to a TIFA or LDFA, and they are at mid-40s for their police department, just like we are.
Okay, but
So-
look at the dollars. I looked it up a month or 2 months ago, and they were at $900,000, and we're at $1.5 million.
Yep, they're actually got about $1 million is where they're at, and actually they just
Well, then
they
we're still
just-
50% higher in dollars.
Correct. I mean, they have different staffing levels than we do. Yep. You know, and when you think just dollars and cents, and you want to talk about dollars and cents, I mean, our patrol guys make currently 25 cents more an hour than Montague does. So it's not it's not an individual cost that is expensive as far as individuals like our guys. Our guys are not making $50,000 more than they are. We are right now, just looking around our county, Muskegon County, Oceana County, some of those departments, the city we just did exchange day with, Fremont, their top rate for their patrol guys are about 39 an hour. Their budget's like 1.65. They have one more officer, they have 9, we have 8. So there's definitely some cost increases. I know from talking with Montague Union rep today that doesn't show clearly in their budget yet, but they had a big increase in their medical because they had to transition to a different medical plan. And that, obviously, those are uncontrollable things that I can't or Roger can't control in the budget. Some of those things are set costs, retirements. We have to pay that stuff. Fringe benefits, those are things that if a guy works on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, it's a set cost for that rate of pay. I can't tell them they're gonna have straight time for the holiday.
Other police departments use part-timers if I'm not
It is
correct.
very rare now. It is very rare. Places that used to have part-timers, there is not, for instance, the last academy that went through West Shore where I went, 24 of the 25 cadets going through were spoken for by departments for full-time employment. There was one person available. We actually picked her up, and she is a great find, but as far as trying to find part-time employees, we used to have 8. The last time we advertised, we got 0 applicants. When we filled a position that was held by Eric Whitlow, we advertised outside, and this is where we're at currently in law enforcement. We got 0 outside applications in our time frame. We got just the internals, the 3 internal part-timers that we had at the time.
And as far as part-timers, that pool just really doesn't exist anymore, nor does a pool of enough officers for the positions that are out there. Communities have gotten to the point where they are paying for the academy expenses for recruits. That was unheard of. I think when I started here, Muskegon was the only city in West Michigan that would pay the cost for an employee, for a prospective employee to go through the academy. Now they're even doing signing bonuses to get police officers. It's the same for fire and for paramedics. Nobody's going into those professions anymore, and there's a huge glut of openings. And I know there's always the kind of the desire, if you will, to do some comparisons. But the question really becomes is City of Whitehall well represented by the current department? And at that funding level, and that really comes down to a council question. If you're satisfied with the services that are being offered for the cost that it's being incurred, then we continue as is.
We also need to look at the call volume versus Whitehall versus Montague. Night and day difference in call volume.
Well, you can say what you want, but I'm offended by a little bit of wordplay there, because we were led to pass the budget last year because of that thing about not hiring replacement.
It doesn't say that.
It
says,
Yeah, I know what you said.
to reduce. That's exactly what it says.
That's
Nobody was
exactly-
misled. It was misinterpreted, if anything.
You talked to us about it. You addressed it verbally.
Yep.
I don't have a recording of it, but I know it. Go ahead.
But today, this is where we're at. Talking about, just again, the process that we go through, we always take a look at it. If we do go through with the full staffing, I already mentioned that it would be a sergeant detective, not a lieutenant detective, and detective is kind of an add-on because that second command position is pretty common with almost every department. So it's more of a second command position than a detective. School resource officer, this was a question that was brought up. Right now, we have figured that it costs $64,000. That's not Travis's entire salary because we don't count his 3 months plus Christmas break into the school calendar. We take the school calendar, we come up with that it's about $64,000 a year this year. Actually, it's probably last year, not this fiscal year, for Travis to be in the schools. And the question was, they didn't see the school's contribution. It's actually on page 5 of the budget. It's right in there, $32,000. Doesn't give a full explanation, but it does say school resource officer. Brandon's already talked to the new school superintendent, and there is an open conversation about increasing that cost as well. And I've seen it all across the board. I don't know if Brandon and Roger have. Some schools pay nothing, some schools pay 100%. A lot of the recent news articles have been about a new wave of federal funding, if it's still available, where school resource officers, the feds used to pay 75% of the first year, 50% of the second, and 25% of the third, and 0 after that, with the understanding somebody would keep picking up those larger amounts on the other side. Because I think Norton Church picked up 2 with this latest round.
Yes, yep.
So it sounds great, but it's a dwindling grant reimbursement. As far as enforcement, that was another question that was brought up, or a concern. We started off hiring Muskegon Charter Township to do our rental inspections. And through the discussion, and I had discussions with them and with the chief and with Brandon about supplementing, not necessarily wiping out everything our police department does, to add on the property maintenance. Because a lot of the property maintenance stuff, other than junk in the front yard, that's kind of pretty obvious, but the property maintenance code kind of goes hand in hand with the building code. So we use Toby to work with our building inspector, and I know fire is also in that mix, all 3 of them. So it's a little bit more specialized. It tends to lean a little bit more towards building code than just trash and junk and abandoned vehicles. And Brandon's already talked with Toby about, working on, I guess, the partnership with that.
Yep.
So I don't know if there's any more questions about, I guess the big one is on the police department. We've heard from 2 council members. I know that it takes a majority to go one way or the other. So none of you have to raise your hand. I'm not the teacher up here.
I just want to say that I'm 100% in support of this budget for the police department. I'm extremely proud of our police department. I think we have an excellent group of individuals that are totally committed to this community, and the proposed plan I think it's a good plan for the community.
I agree with what you say. What I disagree with is being misled in the past.
And I disagree with you there, because I heard that same conversation, and it's exactly as Mr. Hubler said. It was a possibility to do.
Well,
It was never committed that we were going to get rid of a position. It was an option. It was always put on the table as an option.
and I would say that if I misled you, or you feel that I misled you, I apologize, but I don't think that would be any reason to reduce the police budget. Reduce it if you feel that it's necessary, not because I made a misstatement or misled.
Scott, I'm supportive of the budget as well. I know it seems like a lot, and I think the questions have been answered, but I've lived here my whole life. You guys know that I live in the house I grew up in, and so it's, I haven't experienced the police department very directly, except for when they saw that my license tab was expired for 8 months' time. But because I hadn't had a ticket, they, I like the fact that I think they treat people in the community like people. And I know they deal with a lot of mental health issues in a very compassionate way, and so I'm definitely supportive. I think it's part of what makes our community, it's just one piece of what makes our community a good community.
And one thing that I don't know if a lot of people know, wearing the multiple hats I have in the past, our police department, as well as Montague, are one of very few police departments in the county that respond alongside fire and EMS for medicals. They just don't do it. They take it for patrol information and they don't do anything about it. These guys show up. These guys show up and pick people up off the ground. These guys do all that stuff. So yeah, I'm totally satisfied with the budget for the police department.
I guess I am also supportive. I think everything that Steve said with respect to the efficiency, effectiveness, and all of the dedication, I think, is top-notch. I guess I would just ask, as we have to ask with everything, as we go forward, where can we tighten the belt? I think your deficit numbers show it. I think our, economy shows it. We have to tighten the belt, and if there's an opportunity, we need to look at it. So as we go forward, I think we have to do that in every department, and that's just good, responsible management. So I think it sounds like you've done that, with respect to not hiring. I'm sorry, I don't get the levels
it's okay.
correct. Sergeant versus lieutenant,
Lieutenant,
vice
sergeant.
versa.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and with respect to the new person would be coming in at a lower rate than what's currently being for the other officers. I appreciate all of that effort, because that certainly makes a statement as far as looking at the budget. Don't pull that thing out on me. Is there any opportunity to delay the hiring of that new officer until things, the changes that we are making adjust a little bit? Sounds like it's hard to find new people, so maybe that search will take a while. I don't, maybe there's a part-year budget instead of the whole year budget. I don't know. Just looking at an opportunity.
Yeah, sometimes we'll do that. We'll be slow to fill positions. But in this instance, we have one officer who's off on extended medical leave. And you can tell by the lack of polos and dress shirts where that falls. Because I think you guys are splitting a shift.
No, I work in one.
And we actually had a shift become open, and one of the part-timers was already scheduled to work a 12-hour shift. So obviously, we didn't want to put her on a 24-hour shift. So we do kind of look at that, but I think right now we're really hurting. And as we move forward, we might want to fill that position sooner than later. But we're always, where are there areas to cut cost? I mean, these department heads know that when they put that budget on my desk, I don't want to see huge inflationary numbers. And nobody's ever put anything down there that's ridiculous, but sometimes we have to pull back. Citywide, we have gone from a defined benefit retirement plan to a defined contribution, which, as some of us start to retire, that's going to be a huge savings for the city, because with the defined contribution, you're paying for us until we die. And then Brenda gets to see us at the cemetery.
Yes.
With the defined contribution, did I say it the wrong way? Defined benefits, the city pays for us forever. Defined contribution, when the employee leaves, we're done. No more financial liability there. Same with our health care. There is an ability for employees to retire and still carry some city health care, but now we've got health savings accounts. So when that employee's done, we're done. So we're getting rid of a lot of those legacy costs. And we do everything we can to tighten things down, but like with streets and water and sewer, we're starting to get where our infrastructure needs a lot of attention.
Well, so, it sounds like you've thought about all of those things, and you just mentioned part-time officers, so I guess when we were talking earlier, I didn't think we had any, but we do.
We have
Two.
two
Yeah.
fairly regular.
And
And
all
again-
it takes is one police department to come up and say, hey, you're hired, and they leave. And it
Yeah.
happens a lot. This place has a reputation for training their officers very, very well, and they get scooped up on a regular basis. As soon as they get through field training, they're here for a little while, and they're trained by Whitehall. Away they go. And it's happened I've been around this town for a long time, and it's happened forever. Because they know, you know a department and how they hire and how they train and how their people are. And once you get that good reputation, that's who they want.
Well, for me, it's helpful to understand those discussions that happen behind the scenes, because, we don't see that.
Yep.
We don't know what happens, and so that's why I say, as long as we're looking at where we can tighten the belt all the time, not just when it's budget time, but all the time, that's super helpful to know, because we don't sit in on those discussions.
And so what'll happen probably, Deb, I'm just spitballing this, is the detective sergeant will come from within. They
Well,
won't
you
hire.
mentioned that.
Yeah, it'll
right?
come from within, so the person you hire will be at the bottom level. So it's not like they'll hire a detective sergeant from outside and put them in that position, so.
And some of the conversations are pretty simple. When Paul Young retired, Brian and I, because we have two crew leaders. We got rid of foreman a long time ago, because that's not politically correct. I sat down with Brian and said, all right, do we need to fill that position? Do you need two of them? So I don't think there's been a time when that conversation hasn't been had with any openings or pending openings. All right, so now it's gonna get not as exciting for a while. The cemetery trust, that's our perpetual care. A portion of every plot that is sold goes into a fund that is used on limited expenses. So this coming year, we'll have a $1,500 deficit, but Brenda's got over $400,000. We don't really have a target fund balance. We have those when we have operational costs in case something happens. But with the perpetual care, we just spend money. It's much like motor pool for the most part. When we have the money, we spend it.
What's the plot running now, Brenda?
$450 for a resident, $850 for
I'm
non-resident.
gonna save my pennies, okay. I'll reduce that deficit by a little bit this year.
You and I both.
Right, I got my spot.
So the
You're buying for the future, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Get it.
Yeah, no, what are you telling me?
The 422 is basically our perpetual care fund,
Yes, yep.
and
there's a percent that we can
Interest.
spend.
Can spend interest.
Interest.
Yeah. We can spend the interest earned on that. And actually, we've been doing pretty good. Melissa's been working her magic with,
Mutual funds?
no. Who do we invest in?
Well, we have our cemetery trust with PNC, but I have everything else with my class and
Yeah.
several different local banks, CDs, and Rick and I have been doing pretty good. Pretty proud of that.
Good.
so why do we have a deficit?
Well, just in this operating year, because we're doing the mower, half the mower, and I'm not sure what else we're doing. There's nothing big in there. We need a 60-inch mower,
It's just the
and we're splitting that between
Yeah.
cemetery, parks,
Parks, yep.
because it's gonna be up at the cemetery probably half the time that it's out there being used. So it's just a small deficit.
Scott, if I may.
Yes.
And the revenue lines are just, they're an estimate. We could vary more.
Well, it sounds like we just made $900.
Yeah.
All right.
I got mine at 400.
Oh, yeah, I remember when they were a lot cheaper than that. I should have got mine 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What happened in 23, 24 that expenses shot way up? Did we
We
repave or
redid,
something? Or
we
what?
redid a roof, we
Sign.
redid the sign,
Hey.
did we pave that year or the year before?
Paved, yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the artist way.
so that just ate up their fund balance or,
Yeah, it would have for that year, ate up some of it.
and a few other years probably.
Yeah, yep.
Is the old sign going
Gone.
to go away?
Gone.
It's gone? It's gone.
Do we have a cemetery person? Who is that?
Well, Brenda's officially the sexton, she handles all the management stuff, and I think, Nolan
Nolan,
kind of
I was
coordinates
called
most of the.
Roland today by someone, so I
Roland?
like that as our new nickname for Nolan. But
So we
yes,
lost
Nolan.
Logan.
Yeah. So
And
Nolan
that's
is,
DPW then?
yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't have some communities will have a dedicated cemetery sexton, it's a full-time job, but we divvy that up between Brenda and DPW, primarily with Nolan.
It's quiet though.
Mhm.
Quiet.
Brenda wants her on halftime out there.
Unless
Yeah,
you're at Mouth Cemetery, they make noises out there.
yes, they do.
And there's just the exciting half of the expense for a 60-inch mower. Major streets, the summary is that we'll end up with a surplus of $35,000, but we're still gonna be about $38,000 below target. Melissa and I went back and forth between major streets and local streets, seeing who was the more needy child. And as always, it's usually local streets. There's $50,000 that's going from major streets to local streets because that got hit probably the hardest with the storm. Mears was obviously the big obstruction that was blocked, but there's a lot of side streets that were hit pretty hard.
What's the,
Can we go back, is that local streets?
No.
What
That's
was, what
major.
was the one before?
The one before this?
cemetery?
Maybe.
No, just the other.
What do I hit, back?
Did you
Back
have
here.
other streets right
Yeah.
before?
those arrows.
Up or down?
Yeah, try it, see what happens.
Just the back arrow.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut everything down.
No,
I can't even
yeah.
see a back arrow. There.
Left arrow.
Left arrow,
Right arrow?
right arrow.
None of these arrows are
Why,
working.
what
Lily.
keys are working?
Number one.
Oh, wait a minute. It's not even letting me do that on the,
Sorry,
here.
folks.
Oh, yeah, try that down there, there you go.
Major
Down.
streets.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll sit down.
So this is the major streets. Is that the one you wanted or the one before that? The one before was the perpetual care. The
No,
cemetery.
I didn't want that one. I just, this is probably one of my top priorities I got on the list. And I just wanted to mention that there's so many roads that are not even on the list. And, which is still 2011, which I thought we were gonna get an update in
Your list is
January.
right here.
I know,
On
I
the
know.
pace for ratings?
But
We
I
have-
had asked for a needs assessment. We were gonna have it in January. We're still going by 2011.
Pace for
Yeah.
ratings just happened,
Okay.
so I'm waiting to be able to download that into RoadSoft, so.
But, just driving around town, I feel sorry for people who live on Tullywood. I stopped in to see a friend there, and it's pothole city. It's awful, and it's just a shame that,
That's a lot of
that,
fast forwarding.
yeah, and
It-
and then my street is not on for like
31.
2031, my section. I'm already moving to the other side in several sections of Alice because it's so bad. And I'm concerned that,
She wants to meet the police department again, Roger.
No, I've been on Mill Pond for 30 years
I make
and
sure it's
Still needs
but if,
to be fixed.
I mean, shoot, if that's,
In 30 years, it hasn't been touched.
Oh, it has too, Steve.
Well, down to the other end.
what I'm.
They had some extra asphalt from doing some other jobs. They
Excuse me,
said,
I was
well, let's go dump it
talking.
on the end of Mill Pond.
I wasn't done. Quit.
Let's
She talking?
She's
stay
yelling.
on track here.
Okay, I'm not mad, but I just want to finish before I lose my thought. But I'm concerned that Alice, by the time it's fixed, it is going to be undrivable. And I'm concerned about people who have worse streets than that right now. And I know that money is, of course, the issue, but I don't think it's fair for people who are in our city paying tax dollars to have, who else has been on Tullywood?
Well, it's not just that, I mean.
No, if you drive on Tullywood, you will see right in front of an acquaintance of mine's house, and she even has a wheelchair for her son, so I'm sure she can't, walk out in the road to get somewhere. I'm not blaming anybody, but it's not gonna get any cheaper, and in the meantime, we've got so many roads that need help, and I don't know, is there any way we can get more funding? Should we look for another couple mills?
Well, it depends on the tolerance level of the people who vote you into office.
Yeah, that's true.
Because right now, the 2 mills generates $3.90. Does that sound about right,
I
Alyssa?
thought we had 3 mills.
3 mills.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 3 mills brings in about $3.90.
So about a quarter of
and-
a mile.
Barely, barely. We have the ability to go up to 20 mills, so you could bring in another 5 mills, help me with the math, about another $500,000. But if you maxed our residents to the extreme,
Yeah.
you're still only gonna have maybe $1 million a year, and this is $11 million. So we just physically. I'm doing this thing.
All right.
He's trying to hook you up.
Roger asked earlier.
Get your flip phone out and text us in your old school.
I thought you were bringing up a vape pen for me.
Trying to,
But there's no other way, are there more funds we can access at the state or federal level?
Oh, we do everything we can. We've applied 100 times. We get 375
Correct.
every 4 years? 3 years.
3 years.
3 years. There's a small urban grant that's automatically given to us, Montague, the Road Commission, and the Lakewood Club,
Only for major streets.
only for major streets. Local streets is almost non-existent for grant funding. And,
We've applied twice for our local streets.
yep,
Who do we apply to?
The state.
yep.
Can we hire a grant writer?
They're not gonna have any more luck. I mean, Prime and Newhoff helps us, put in the grants, and they do these for all of their clients all over the place. It's a huge
They
task
charge us $1 million.
to tackle. This is what we've got based on the 2011 plan, because we've been chipping away at that for 14 years. But with the new pacer, these might move around a little bit depending on the condition of the roads. The dollars probably won't change. But again, look at Benston. But that's gonna be a Tifa LDFA joint project, so the 3.1 million is probably doable in a couple of years.
And that's probably more than just the road, isn't it?
Water, Brian?
Yes,
in
there'd be
Benston?
some water on that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And we do get creative when we're doing water and sewer. We have water and or sewer. If they have the available funds, help put the asphalt back in place, because, the theory is we can't fix them without tearing up the road.
And the sidewalks and the storm system.
Yeah, so we do what we can, but it's a challenge. It really is, and everybody's, well, not everybody's, because everybody on Warner Street's real happy. But anybody with one or two potholes is wanting to know when their street's gonna get fixed, but we just can't do it. And the Crestwood one, I think I probably explained that. We're still trying to figure that out. I have a meeting next week, maybe this week, with representatives from the state of Michigan and the new housing director for the county about developing that subdivision. And they've actually expanded the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority to allow the construction of subdivisions using TIF captured money to pay for infrastructure. But this is always kind of a question as to how we get there. With Tannery Bay, Eastbrook Homes fronted all of the cost. And as you know, we've been paying them back $4.some million over all the years with the captured taxes. So when that's paid off, then we can pretty much be done with the Brownfield. We can do that here as well, and I think that works out to some $30,000 a lot, which makes that property a lot more affordable. But it's still, it's a very difficult task.
Was there a study done on that as far as feasibility?
Yes, we had Prime de Newhoff do a preliminary on that, because our biggest concern, and we've had a couple of developers show some interest, and I guess what I would envision is that at some point, we'd have this great plan, we'd put it out for proposals for developers to come in and tell, you might actually say the houses can't cost more than X number of dollars. Bid that out, have some proposals come in, and the council says we're gonna go with XYZ construction company, get them to start building. Because I think that's where, when council talks about affordable, what does that really mean? I think the one example was the Shelby homes, Shelby something, up in Shelby. That Peterson Farms forked out a majority of that money. And they actually vet people who want to build and buy those homes. So it's a little bit more of a process.
What did Fremont say they did with a subdivision? No, there was one that they, you remember, Deb? There was something they did with a subdivision. They said they pretty much had to, was it give it away, or it wasn't the property, I mean, it was to get them to do
Yeah,
it.
they gave him the property.
Is that the one by the school?
I think so. One of those over there they were talking about, that they'd done that.
And that could be part of, I don't even know what a residential lot goes for now, but
Yeah.
I think we came up with 20 lots. Because we have to put in some storm retention, but that could be, we could sell it for $1, just to get those homes built in that area.
Did the city own that property by the water tower before that got developed?
No, I
That
don't
was
believe
always
so. I think that was
private?
all bought by
Ritterman.
Sethco, Bartholomew.
Yeah, Ritterman.
Ritterman was,
Okay.
Jackson Murphy involved in that too?
Yes.
Yeah, so there was 4 people that got together and.
So they paid for all the roads and all the infrastructure and the whole works? in that
Yes,
subdivision?
yep. And that's where we amended the ordinance that would allow for the waiver of a lot of our water and sewer connection fees if a majority of the project is funded by other sources. So basically, they put it in, so there's really no cost to the city, other than meters, Brian, I think,
Meters and,
actual connections.
distribution.
Pete's over there.
Pete, can I have a clicker?
But just to follow up on that, when they do that, like they did at Tannery Bay, the water and sewer has been dedicated to the city, but they paid for all of it, but we still have our engineers on site to make sure it's built properly.
Trunkage
up to our
fee.
codes. Trunkage fees. That's done.
If we do that, will that interfere in any way with the tax money coming from Tannery Bay when that one is paid off?
No, not at all. This would be a separate, and we just kind of plugged it in the brownfield because we just needed a placeholder. This would be set up as a separate brownfield. The entire city, or as a separate site, the entire city is a brownfield, is part of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. But then everything is site-specific because we looked at Tannery Bay, we looked at Coke Chemical, we looked at 5A oil, 4A oil, out there on Lakeview. So we would set that subdivision up separately. So the taxes raised there would offset, oh, I'm on the wrong slide already, that's $630,000. So the property owners would be paying that back.
And the Tannery Bay money will, the Tannery Bay thing will be paid off in about 2.5 years?
I think we could probably pay it off in the next fiscal year. I think it's set up for like $400,000 and $300,000 in the last 2 years. But we've been paying Eastbrook back, I think it's 1.1 million this year. So in the 26-27 budget, that could easily be paid off. So in the 27-28 budget, about half of that debt would be gone and that
Right.
collection would be gone. And right now, about half of that is the city's portion.
Right.
So you're probably looking at 1.2, 1.3 million. So now the general fund would have $600,000 to $700,000 more dollars to go towards roads. So, and in a few years, oh, I don't even know now, Harwood Flats has got 9 more years, I think, under their commercial rehab, 9 or 8 more years. And when that's done, that's a $7.5 million building that will start paying taxes. So we do have revenue coming in with a little patience.
That's a long time later.
I mean,
It is. I actually had Ed Whalen in today, and he asked if Muskegon Avenue would be paid before he died. And I said, you got 5 more years to hang on, and we'll get it done for you. So that's incentive.
Does any of that Howmet tax money start this year? Or will that be when, is that during progress while they're building, or does it wait till they're done?
No, there's always, as of December 1st, right? December 31st is the tax year. Whatever, if it's a 10 million, no, that was $100 million building. So whatever progress they had made by that date would go on the tax rolls.
Okay.
And I think what I'd mentioned, if that's fully built out, that's an extra $600,000 into TIFA. But then again, that could allow TIFA to pass more money through. And again, that would be another $300,000 of that capture that could go to the general fund.
I know we're on budget and stuff, but again, all those of us that went to Fremont, they have a, what's that number? 525?
625.
625?
I think it's 625. That's the annex thing?
With an annexation agreement?
425?
420? It was one of those 25.
325.
Yeah, anyways.
221.
Yeah, but again, we're talking about capturing taxes and capturing money. That seems like a really good deal for both the township and us if we.
We actually have a 425 with Whitehall Township. It's probably expired by now for the industrial park, because we expanded the part that goes up Almonds Way.
Yeah.
We actually did a 425, and we must have been really smart, or the township must have been really generous, because there was no tax sharing unless we failed to develop that within 5 years. So we got excavators in there that summer.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to lose what taxes they had. I mean, they were willing to give it up, but kind of had a little bit of fallback. They were concerned we were just going to sit on it forever.
Yeah.
They would have just lost the tax base with no
Because
growth.
that would be something I could see for the city would be really good actually be good for all of us. I mean, they capture some money with, I think that was what,
They
4
did a mill.
4 mills.
4 mills, I
4
think
mills.
is what they get over the certain period of time.
Yep.
And we cover, I mean, that might be something to have a discussion with them about. I mean, granted, they're still capturing some money. I mean, if we I mean, we know where the development's gonna go, it's not here. I mean, we're pretty much tapped out with property-wise, but they aren't that direction, so, I mean, and we are running water and everything out there, so.
Yep.
Might be something to look at, it kind of piqued my interest when they started talking about it, and I mean, they went through it pretty quick with all the stuff we were learning, but that was one of the things that stuck out with me was, and we all know Whitehall Township's, I think, the smallest township in the state of Michigan, so. Might be
Yeah,
good.
there's,
Might give them some income, give us some income, and help.
we haven't really gotten that serious about that kind of conversation, but there seems to be, like a cycle with local government. Because I think about every 4 years, they ask about police coverage.
Yeah.
And every time they ask, the cost just got higher because it's been 4 years. So wages and cruisers and everything else,
goes up.
and they keep saying that's too expensive, too expensive.
Yep.
So I know the way we deal with potholes is we send DPW out there and with some shovels and they throw stuff in there. We considered possibly hooking up with Montague or the township and buying a small paver to deal with small portions of paving on our own.
Well, Brian?
We have not had those discussions. It's probably one discussion we could have. Expensive piece of equipment, but
And we do have, we share a hot asphalt trailer with Montague. So that trailer that you see, if we share that with Montague.
crack sealer.
Yeah.
Trying to think, is there a way we can,
Well, Montague approaches their roads a lot different than we do.
In what regard? How-
They're throwing Band-Aids on them.
Oh, that's
They
fine.
last about 5
When
more
we do
years.
roads, we do complete, and I gotta be careful because that was misunderstood. Montague a lot of times does the chip and seal. You throw tar down, throw some rock, which is great. It takes care of the surface and it looks nice. But, really what's happening to roads is what's underneath it. When that base starts to give and the drainage starts to eat away at it, that's what you really need to address. So,
But couldn't you do that on some of the roads that are really hideous until, it's a, yeah, but you're not gonna get to them anyway, so would it help at all to just pick it up?
It depends on the street.
I just, yeah, and I know there was an assessment of like the grading of the roads, and correct me if I misunderstood, but I thought what I understood was that we kind of the goal is to wait for them to be really bad, because then they get higher on the list to
well,
clarify.
I think when they first came out with all of the asset management stuff,
Yep.
what they were saying is great roads leave alone. The roads that are in the middle, those are the ones you address before they get to the bottom, and just let the bottoms go until they're completely falling apart. Kind of trying to save the middle child. That's a really horrible analogy. But basically that's what they were saying is let the bad roads just go. Where I think what we're trying to do is address the worst roads before they get to that condition. From an engineering standpoint, it kind of makes sense. But from a citizen standpoint, the people that are driving roads, they'll kind of argue. I know I do. My wife hates it when I do it. When I see stretches of 31 being fixed that
Well,
really didn't look that bad,
Yeah.
that's because they're taking care of that middle level of street improvements.
So what's the difference? I know we do the water and the sewer and all the infrastructure pieces too, and the sidewalk and the
Vertical,
curb and all
yeah.
of those kinds of things too. But, you see miles of 31 and overnight seems like it's nice and smooth again. So is there a way to do some of that in some of our worst streets until we can get to doing the whole infrastructure? I know that sounds like you're just putting a Band-Aid on it, but Band-Aids
Well,
would
and
be
that's
nice.
good. And I don't know, Brian could, we could follow up with that and find out what that cost is, but the more Band-Aids you put on, the less money you have for the full surgery.
Yeah,
Well, I just feel like we're doing a good bit of our residents a disservice by leaving some of these really bad roads for them to drive on.
yeah. And if there's a
we
way to-
had this conversation about taking the money, borrowing the money and fixing those roads.
Do it
How much it
fast,
was
all
gonna
at once.
cost.
Right.
It was the slow and pay as you go, or the
Yep.
Yeah.
quick and go into debt. And really, the best thing for this community financially is to do what we're doing, going slow and pay for them as we go.
Can you imagine if we did that and then we get hit with a $600,000 deal from the storms? I mean,
Well, we would still
I mean,
do what we can to protect
Yeah.
the fund balances and having adequate reserves. We're dealing out at the Resource Recovery Center. We're talking about rates and all of the needs out at the wastewater plant. And our consultant is telling us that debt is good. Because what that does is the people that are going to be driving on the roads for the next 20 to 30 years are going to be paying for it with their debt. Where we've already paid for it with our tax money. So that's a good sense. On the other side, it does limit your future options, if you've got debt to pay off. And debt, pretty much with interest, it'll almost double the cost of the project. And I don't know how much faster we can go. I mean, we all lived through Warner Street. That was one street, a major thoroughfare. But if we're doing, I'm going to fast forward again. Hopefully nobody. How many of these streets, can you imagine doing all of these streets in one summer? I'll be down in Florida. Call me when it's done.
How do I get there?
You can't get there from here.
I'll fly. But that's a huge undertaking. We try and do as much as we can. We're trying to keep the city open for business during the summer. We just talked to John Dillevan because we're going to have to do something really, really soon at Mears and Elliott because that storm drain is just eroding like crazy. It held our weight, but I'm not sure how much more weight it's going to hold. But John was like, oh, what's that going to do to my summer traffic? I said, well, it's better than a car falling in a sinkhole. So even one intersection is going to affect one business. Well, two, because you got the funeral home on the other side. So, council could consider borrowing, but again, that's going to be a huge task. And if you're looking at 11 million, you're talking 22 million. A 20-year debt is going to be $1 million a year. If we had $1 million a year, we could be doing streets.
Yeah, we could be doing this street a year.
I think we did do ourselves a service when we ended up switching because those roads seem to be holding up better, the ones we did the new mix on. I mean, the old Michigan mix that we were using, council looked back.
It's super payment.
That's been how long? We changed that, 8 years maybe?
Yeah.
We went to a smaller stone, I don't know if you guys know that. So, just to give you guys, if I say it wrong, Brian, let me know.
No, go for it.
So, some engineer somewhere came up with this Michigan mix, and what this Michigan mix is the blacktop and bigger stones. So their thought process is that the rain comes in, gets on the roadway, goes through the roadway to the roadbed and disperses. Well, even my little pea brain looks and says, okay, in Michigan, roads freeze, so when you put salt on the roads get wet, the water goes in the thing, and then it freezes back up again once it ice expands, and it breaks your roadway up. So we started with Division Street, and that section of Division from Wesco to where, Brian? Alice, or farther?
It was further.
We did the smaller stone, and the smaller stone, actually, the water washes off to the side. It doesn't go through the roadbed, and as far as I'm concerned, looking at how Division Street is, that's held up a whole lot better than our other roads. So we went to that, and I think we did ourselves we deserve an attaboy for that one, because we really did. It's stickier, it takes longer to be able to drive on it, but once it's set, it's better.
What do they call that, where they grind up the top inch or so
Milling,
and yeah.
mill
Is that what
and
they
fill.
call it? That's
Yep.
that's what they do out on the freeway, isn't it?
Yep, that's what they did on the expressway, that's correct.
But we don't
That
do
was
any
my,
of that.
that's my plan for Alice Street.
Oh,
Yeah, so there are ways we can do less than a complete rebuild.
right.
And that's the way Warner was done.
Oh,
It was a
it?
mill and fill, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, can I just suggest that it's really hard for at least me to, I get that it's expensive and it's a big job, but I don't even know what the priority list is because we don't have the updated. And will we get that to be able to see the bigger picture?
Well, you do have a priority list that'll take you through the next 5 or 6 years, and that is going off the old one. Streets, they're probably going to keep deteriorating at the same rate across the whole spectrum. I mean, obviously, major streets with more traffic are going to deteriorate a little quicker. But right now, and you're not going to fund any streets in this budget, so next fiscal year, you're going to have the new PACER rating, you're going to have the new list from the engineers with a recommendation from a new public works director as to what streets really need to be taken care of. And, you know, sometimes we move that around. I don't think we had planned to do Mohawk at all. Until one winter, a plow truck cut the edge and all that asphalt came up.
That little section on Mears?
Yep.
That wasn't on the list.
Yep,
was it?
Lewis and Lakeview, we
Yeah.
moved that up because that was the $100 million expansion for Howmet. And the state wanted to know what the city was gonna put in the pot for that, so we kind of moved that one up. So, you know, the best answer is we can't afford to do everything real quick, and we will have a new listing probably in the next couple of months.
And continue to apply for grants.
Is there any opportunity to ask Howmet for help? I mean, we give them a lot. I know they have a lot of trucks and stuff that come in, they use our roads quite heavily. I get asked that question all the time, do we have any help coming from Howmet? So is
We
there an
looked at a
opportunity?
local income
No.
tax one,
Well-
a couple of times.
Yeah,
What's that?
We looked at a local income tax a couple of times, because that would hit them and their employees that come in and drive on our roads and
Yeah.
use our public service and our police department and our fire department and ambulance service and all that.
and they're already the largest taxpayer by far, so they are already contributing to the general fund. and-
I understand, I'm just,
Yep.
as there would,
And,
have them give us
In
more.
the past, they have.
yes, they have Lake Street with the
50,000
Green
there.
Street, they
Yep.
kicked in money there. But they're kind of, and I think their foundation is kind of transitioning to be a little more broad in where they give grant funding. Because they've always kind of stood hard on, well, since they were taken over by Alcoa, it was the STEM. So science, technology, engineering, and math. But the engineering wasn't, we convinced them that a Green Street was engineering. So they've been kind of restricted. A lot of that is educational, because I think they still fund the Whitehall, maybe now Montague's robotics program. They help fund those. Plus they have employees go over there and lend their professional services. So,
Well, we could, I mean, plants here, and we are their home base.
I all saw the article. that
Seems
they
like it wouldn't hurt to
popped
ask.
up a bundle from Muskegon.
I would like to, I mean, I know that my street, Alva Street, was a whole lot different 14 years ago in 2011. You know, so that's why it's hard for me to look at a 2011 assessment and see that it relates to the reality of the roads.
And we do have the new numbers.
Do you?
Yep.
Yeah, but we don't, it's not available now.
No. it isn't.
it'll be available before you do your next street project.
But I want it for the budget.
But there's, I mean, we can't afford a new street with this budget. I mean, basically, we've been doing a street project every other year, just to build up the funds.
Can you say more about the exploration of the local income tax? You said that it had been looked at, but I don't have a recollection of that.
Yeah, I think we've done it at least twice since
At
I've
least
been
twice,
here.
it was a lot.
Basically, what you look at is when you implement an income tax, you lower your property tax. Usually don't eliminate it, but it's very expensive to collect an income tax, because you basically have to have, I think we looked at least 2 full-time people, because that's an ongoing basis. With property taxes, it's basically twice a year. It's a disincentive for businesses, but it's obviously an incentive for residents, because your property tax lowers. The odd thing, and if you look at Muskegon, when they lost Sappy, that was a huge hit in their income tax. You know, and I think they're still kind of recovering with that. So you tend not to have a huge net gain, because if you do the income tax, you lower the property tax. So it's kind of a wash. It just depends on who you want to get the money from.
And that's why we didn't do it. 2 times we looked at it.
Yeah, and we even ran the
No, I
numbers
didn't
as to
know
what.
we had even discussed
I thought
it,
the
so-
same thing, because I pay City of Muskegon tax for where I work, and it was supposed to initially go to police and fire protection, and
Not goes everywhere.
now I think it goes everywhere, because when it was initially sold to the public, it was like, yep, we're gonna fund the police and fire with that, but, yeah, how they do everything.
And it's 1%, I think the state law maxes it out at 1%
Yeah.
for residents and 0.5% for non-residents.
Yep.
Because I know I still,
don't think you treat
I actually
people
have,
either.
No.
I actually got a letter from the city of Muskegon wanting to verify that none of my income came from working in the city of Muskegon. It's like, you got my W-2, it says City of Whitehall.
No, well, thanks, and like I said, I didn't know
Yeah.
that we had had a discussion about it, and I get asked about it now and
Yep.
then, so it's helpful to know, yeah.
Again, it's part of that cycle.
Mhm.
Well, if you live in the city and work outside, then it's a half, right? I believe. But if you live in
No,
the
I-
city and work in the city, then it's 1%. Is that how it works? And if you just work in the,
Pardon?
I thought it was the other way around.
if you live outside and work in the city, you pay a 0.5%. If you live in the city and work
Right,
outside the city, you pay 0.5%.
right.
But if you live and work in the city, then you pay 1, right? I think that's how it works.
I'm not.
You're not
Roger's
sure?
Googling it right now, he'll get us an answer. Local streets, we're looking at a surplus of $2,600, and that's with the $50,000 transfer from major streets into local. We're still gonna be $37,000 below the target. And again, I think, I don't know if it was Debbie or not, I think we get rid of those below targets just over a period of time. You know, there's not gonna be any quick fix. I don't think, knock on wood, with $25,000, that's really thin for local streets, but I don't think we're gonna halt any operations being below our target fund balances. It's just always that comfort level, so that when the economy goes crazy or a storm hits, you got something to pull up the bootstraps. Salvage inspections, this is such an exciting one, 2,700 in revenue. We'll have a surplus of 1,600, which gives us a pretty hefty amount above our target fund balance. And this is basically, we have one officer who's certified to, vehicles that have been totaled, and then they can be salvaged, and then you have to go through and have it inspected so you can put it back on the road. So, not a real, from a financial perspective. Fernando probably knows it. I don't want to say anything bad, because that's what he does. The marijuana fund is our 2 retail facilities. We're gonna have a little bit of a deficit this year. Primarily what we're doing, again, looking at trying to shift some of the general fund police department expenses, is I think we budgeted $10,000 a year, but we're gonna double that. We're gonna want the officers to make more visits. That's kind of a requirement. When they walk in, they verify that all the security and everything's up to code. So we'll be able to do that for maybe another 2 years to, in a sense, shift some of the police department costs to the marijuana fund so they can go do some inspections. And I think I probably just said that. And with wages, mine are spread all over the place. We always kind of balance basically on where we think we're going to be working, where we've been working historically, and who can afford things. When the early days of the tannery, I think probably half of my wages were being billed to the brownfield, because it was a lot of my time. So now we kind of adjust things based on those 3, where we spend our time, where we think we'll spend our time, and where the fund can easily afford. And that's not just me, there's, I think, who's spread around the most? That guy, he's all over the place. Tannery Bay, we'll have a surplus of 38,000, will be below the targeted fund balance. But the big thing in here is that's where we budgeted that 600,000 plus for the Forest Hills subdivision. So this could be adjusted if we move forward with that in the fiscal year, or if we don't, or by what method we move forward. And I keep jumping ahead of myself. 630 for Forest Hills and 1.1 million in due care reimbursement.
Once that's paid, that will only 877.
Pardon me?
When that's paid, we'll have a balance of 877.
877, okay. So that could probably be paid off in the next fiscal year. Tifa is primarily downtown, and we encompass most, I think, all of the Howmet facilities. We're gonna have about a $500,000, all right, that's way too much of a rounding, $420,000 deficit. We're still gonna be above the target. And the reason for that is we're looking at doing West Colby. We got the preliminary, well, Tifa's approved the final designs, but we had to pull back on the bathroom and the stage because that put the budget way out outside of our abilities for this year. Plus now we're having some discussions with some locals and with Brian as to the alignment of the stage and looking into the sun. Tannery Bay, we have 60,000 budgeted this year, but we've kind of backed off of that because we're having to do full-on engineering to satisfy Eagle as far as what we want to do down there. But we bumped it up by $30,000 because it's another year, it's another chunk of money in inflation. $500,000 in pass-through, and the Lake Street sewer engineering. As a reminder to council and as to the benefit of the audience, I've been in touch with Congressman Peters' office about a CDS grant, Congressional Discretionary Spending. I think a lot of us have heard the word pork belly. Hey, when it helps us, I'm opposed to them, but when it helps us out, I'm going for it. To redo the Lake Street sewer lift station and the force main from the lift station up to M Station. M&W, which is in front of Crosswinds Marina. That's over $2 million. And when we do the lift station, we're going to put it on our own property and get rid of that easement. So what we're looking at is we've asked Congressman Peters to fund it. So they're looking at how they can do it and if they possibly can and under what, because there's actually 3 or 4 different categories. But what I'd like to do is start moving ahead with the engineering, because we're to the point where the funding would be great, but we almost can't wait too long to get that lift station fixed. If you've been to the Eagles, you've talked to some of the Eagle members, that's one of the big issues. Plus that thing is just, I don't even know if it's on its last leg.
Well, there's been increases to it with, Howmet plus Tannery Bay.
Yeah.
It's at its end of its life cycle, unfortunately.
Yep.
I know we didn't, it's not on there, but I know the council's talked about this, I know Tiffin's talked about this, as far as putting a stairway from the First Street parking lot down to the bike path. Now, I don't see that as a huge expenditure. I think the benefits would be huge to the community. I'd certainly like to find funds to do it this year.
Yeah, Tiffin's actually put that a little bit further out on their capital needs improvements. Knowing the concerns council has, I think what LDFA and Tiff are going to focus on, probably for the next 3 or 4 years, is street improvements. Now, we're limited, because actually, if you look at the 26 miles of streets that we have in the city, there's probably almost as much in LDFA as there is in Tifa, because we kind of gerrymandered. I kind of had a southern accent there for some reason. The actual district to move around that. But we can take that back to Tifa for consideration. I think that was originally Steve's idea, was to have that stairway down at First Street. And that's, that's a whole part of the Colby project, as well as the Slocum switchback, because we're trying to draw all those voters up into the downtown, and that would certainly help.
They can't get up there now very well.
Pardon?
Can't get up there now very well. I mean, from the park up to the downtown.
I think we looked at that with the Harwood Flats going in too, didn't we?
Yeah, we had some discussions about that.
That they might be able to help us out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think Mahoney had designed one, your brother, a while back had some hand-drawn thing that he'd done actually quite well.
Still have it, yeah.
You still got it?
I'd like to know just basically how much would it cost to put one? I mean, I don't think we're talking $100,000.
If you want to make it accessible, because you're going to have to use a lot more area. We're lucky at Colby because we've got a lot of area, but when you're talking limited real estate, then you're starting to get into, like a lot of landings to go back and forth. And that's, if you look at the Slocum Switchback, I mean, that's an entire 60-foot wide street, or is that an 80?
No, that's an 80.
So, if you want to forego that, yeah, straight set of stairs. But we can maybe have something back to Tifa in July. Because we love budget amendments, don't we? No, we don't. The inspections department, this is building and the rental inspections. We're going to have a slight deficit, but we're still way above our target fund balance. That's just money in and money out. With the building, plumbing, and electrical inspector, we collect fees, they get, where are we at now, 90%?
No.
85? Do I have 80? 80 going once?
I think it's 85. And
85.
we keep the 15, yeah.
Yeah. And the portion we keep pays a big chunk of Jacob's salary out at DPW because he helps process all of the permits. In the LDFA, the industrial park, we're going to have about a $61,000 surplus. That puts us way above the target. LDFA hasn't got a lot of infrastructure expansion to consider, but we're starting to build up that fund balance so we can go back in there in a few years and fix some roads. And again, I was ahead of myself a little bit. And we've got the Playhouse sponsorship in there. I don't know if now's a good time to discuss that, or if you want to wait till we get to the Playhouse. We'll wait till we get to the Playhouse. Capital projects, this is street, sewers, and waters, and, kind of always have to remind people that when we do roads, we just don't do asphalt rarely. We're always doing infrastructure underneath them. So we're still channeling the money in from that 3 mills. We'll have a surplus of $379. There's no real target fund balance because we don't have ongoing annual cost with that, but we'll be up to about $800,000, which combined with next fiscal year will put us comfortably over $1 million to do a street project. And again, we're looking at Lake Street coming up at $1,057,000, and then I've already mentioned the engineering for the sewer lift station and sewer main.
Will they be done with their building down there at Tannery Bay by 2027? It doesn't look like they've done anything for a while.
They're waiting for Eagle to approve the wall,
Oh,
Yeah.
so
Between
phase 3
them
has
and the
not
lake.
started.
between them and the lake.
I'm thinking so. I'm not sure exactly where that's going, but yeah.
Yeah, at the pace they've been going, they could probably have that phase 3 done by 2027.
Because that was the reason for putting off fixing Lake Street, was because they using all their heavy trucks to go back and forth through there. And
Yeah, and we do try and coordinate that with large developments. I know with Water Tower Place, there was an issue because I think the developer originally put in all sidewalks as a requirement on lots. And the next thing you know, you got
Heavy
cement trucks,
equipment
and excavators,
Oh,
and all the
yeah.
sidewalks were getting busted up. So this is just kind of the list. Again, Crestwood would be that Forest Hill subdivision. And then according to the Pacer rating and Brian's expert opinion, we're looking at the south end of Lake Street, Benston Avenue, pretty much everything. Livingston, the industrial park, Muskegon, Livingston Division, and then Alice. All the way up to 2031. But that's subject to change, as we've mentioned, once we get those new Pacer ratings in. And then we get to the Playhouse operating, and I know we can probably adjust this a little bit, but they would be looking at about a $38,000 surplus at the end of next fiscal year. We've got unrestricted funds, but a lot of that really is the prepaid pledges that we're earning interest off quite handily. That is covering the minimal defaults on some of those contributions. And then the debt, again, the deficit, but again, we actually have available funds to cover, and this is just the annual. So we plan to collect 64 grand The debt, I think, has always been 118, hasn't it? Been a flat, or does it fluctuate?
Are you talking about the capital?
Expenses.
Or operating
Capital.
capital? It's been going down.
Oh,
The
the
actual
balance.
payment itself, oh, the balances, but the payments themselves have been reducing as well.
Yeah.
Over time, yes.
So some of the questions that were raised last night, just that the Playhouse Committee recommended 50,000 for 5 years. LDFA has approved 50,000 in the current fiscal year and 90 in next year. We've talked about expanding the TIFA district so that the TIFA can start assisting the Playhouse when necessary, if necessary. Both of them have approved it. They see the value and the support for it. And there's one comment about asking voters to approve how tax dollars are spent, or not how it's spent. Asking the taxpayers if they want to put tax money towards supporting the Playhouse. I think that's not advisable because where do you stop? Back when we raised the millage by 3 mills, Tandy might have been on council and Jeff. The comment was, let's take it to a vote of the people. Maybe Steve was. And I said, if you take it to a vote of the people and it's voted down, then what are you going to do? You know, if they say we don't want you to raise our millage, then you're stuck without an additional 3 mills. So at times, the city council's got to make those decisions. Obviously, you hear from your constituents what you should and shouldn't do. But I think the real danger there is how big of a can of worms do you open up? Are we going to start asking them, do we do a swing set or a slide at Goodrich Park? You know, it's sometimes you just got to take the bullet and take either the praise or sometimes the shots at you.
I would, of course, you're gonna be gone in a couple of months, but I had suggested doing like city government 101, you know,
Yep.
civic education, budget, city budget 101. I just think that's a way to bring people more into the process so that when they want to attend this meeting, they've got a little bit of that background and they can see how it works at our meetings. So I'll make that recommendation to the new person.
Whether you do it by, and somehow I think we should measure, instead of just always saying the city supports it. I think we should get some input from the community.
Well, I'll tell you that, you know, if you're talking financially, if you asked our 3,000,
2909 if you want to.
2909
That
residents,
census, we'll put it all up by then.
it's probably not going to be a huge majority. If you're asking them, do you want your money to go to the Playhouse? But you got to remember, there were how many donors that kicked in $3.4 million? Those people made a huge commitment, whether they're in the city or outside the city, for a facility that's in the city. You know,
I think-
again, if you go around and ask people, you know, do you want your tax money to go here, I think that's a little fraught with danger. I think,
But I mean, I know that they just had a fundraiser. I imagine they took in quite a bit. Is that factored into this budget
next year's, yep,
for next year?
yep,
How much did they get on that?
65,000?
Something like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
And I mean, and I congratulate them on that. That's great and everything. But I think the majority of that money should come from the people that, you know, that,
Yes.
from the people that support the Playhouse that are, you know, in and out of the city. And I don't know how you, it would be a good reference point even if you didn't follow it, just to know how many of the people do or don't want to support it.
Yeah. And I think you're right, obviously it's set up as an enterprise fund where it's supposed to be self-sufficient. Same as a marina, water, sewer. Water and sewer are a little bit different because you pretty much, you don't have a choice. You have a choice to go to the marina, you have a choice to go to the park, you have a choice to go to the Playhouse. But this would, with it encompassed in the TIFA district, would be that, basically that emergency fallback. Not necessarily, you know,
Well,
here's an open door and come take as much money as you want.
that's the way I take it.
Yeah,
So, you know, I'll vote opposed to that when it comes up. I guess that's, I just think people's opinions should be factored in.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying discount them, but, you know, if you go to the people and say, what do you think, and that's what's gonna happen. I know with actual, design of the Playhouse, we had a couple of public meetings. People had some ideas, and one gentleman got very upset because he said we weren't listening to him, and I said, no, we are listening to you. Basically, his pitch was that all significant government buildings have steps coming out the front. Well, if you've been at the Playhouse, we can't do that. We only have 10 feet. But he was still pretty upset because he thought by listening meant we were going to do what he wanted to. So yeah, public opinion is huge, and we've got to listen to it. But not just to say it shall be this or that based upon what the public says.
Didn't a lot of the people that gave commitments and gave money to the Playhouse financially, didn't they base that on the fact that the city was gonna run the Playhouse?
Yeah, there was a gentleman and a son who donated $800,000. Nobody's going to donate hoping, you know, well, you know, if you close it in 3 years, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I know it's been a struggle recently, but we have made money. You know, it's kind of goes up and down, and we're, you know, we got hit hard by COVID. I know I keep saying that, but that's the reality if you look at the numbers. So yeah, a lot of people have donated. In fact, Frank Benerick, who was the chairman along with Jan Dewar and Tom Spencer, you know, he kind of pulled me to the side and says, you know, we donated, I won't tell you how much he donated, but he donated a lot. And he said, you know, we donated with the understanding, I mean, there was no commitments, nothing in writing, that the city would, you know, at least
Run that thing.
run it until, you know, needs another $4 or $5 million.
Right.
So yeah, we kind of, no promises, but the understanding was, yes, we're not going to take your money, thank you very much, and we're shutting it down because we're having a rough go of it. If this trend, if this is not a trend, if this is reality, that we're going to lose $50,000, $60,000 every year at the Playhouse, then yeah, we're going to look at some harsh decisions at that point. We're hoping it's a trend, and as all of you know in this audience, that the economy is up and down. We always blame the president when it's down and congratulate him and eventually her when it's up. When the president, a lot of times, is, you know, the economy's a little beyond their control.
Scott, we see 140,000 in the budget, and
Yes.
you mentioned 50 and then 90, so give us more details on how that comes to 140, because you said 50 this fiscal year and then 90 next year, but we see 140 for next year in the budget. So can you tell me?
I can,
Yeah,
please. That was what we were checking, your papers.
Oh, you changed it?
Right.
Oh, okay. So this is new, all right.
Yeah, it was,
50 this year, 90 next, to make the 140.
Thank you.
Scott,
So it's 2 years.
at some point, I would like to discuss the recommendations, which is what I thought we were going to do at some point. Certainly, we don't need to get into it today, but you know, that was my intention when I made the motion to establish the committee. So we haven't had a chance to do that. I really would, if there's any money in that, I would like to see more staffing. I think we're under capacity, but I also would like to see marketing. You know, I think we have, Beth knows this, of course, obviously more than I do, but, you know, we have different audiences. You know, we've got, you know, our summer folks, you know, we've got people like Frank Bednarek and other people. We have people in the city who are happy to support it but don't go there. But I am concerned with, as we move forward, and the economy is going to be a little up and down, and prices are going up everywhere. I'm a little concerned about the increase in ticket prices, and I also want to be really careful about not starting to make this feel a little elitist. I know Frank was very well intentioned when he said, you know, we've had people donate $500,000 and they don't even live here. Now, to a resident, you know, who is paying tax dollars and may or may not agree with that, that sounds kind of like, what? You know, what are you talking about that? I don't have $500,000 and I just don't want to have my, you know, taxes go to that. So I think we need to really be careful about the messaging, because I have heard a little more rumbling, and I think it's because people, you know, everything's going up. And I would like to see us directly address that and have some messaging very specifically for City of Whitehall people, you know? And also, why don't we have a couple days, especially just for city residents, where we have something that's, you know, free, half cost, or, you know what I mean, to show them that we care about them too.
Yeah, and we,
Can I say something about that?
yes, you may.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, and that has been one of my concerns is, you know, our tickets are now $30 for the summer, which is really a reasonable amount if you have disposable income.
It is.
Now, on the other hand, we also offer free tickets through the library. We have 10 tickets per event that we do. You can go and check out 2 tickets twice a year. And we also offer for every show, I don't know if it's every show, but at least on a couple of the matinees, performances in the summer, there's a pay what you can option.
Yeah.
So people can come in and say, I can give you $1,
And
that's good to go. So we will be making, we do advertise that through our website, we advertise it online, on the radio, and also in the Beacon and in the Oceana Herald, that paper. So yeah, but please feel, you know, as you are out in the community, I would encourage all of you to say, hey, you know, the Playhouse does offer these options to come in and pay what you can, and we do have quite a few people who take advantage of that.
Would you consider though something that is directly saying, hey, we are so glad that you are in this city and you help support this Playhouse, and so, you know, maybe, I don't know, 4 times a year or whatever, but it's like, hey, this is Thank You City of Whitehall Residents Day. Something
Good
that,
idea.
yeah, I just think it would build some more
Yeah.
positive feeling and bring people in that maybe might not have gone in before, and you're just kind of like, hey, this is for you. We're here, we appreciate your support, we get a lot of support from other people, but hey, this is for you.
And I think you've had special events for skilled nursing home, for,
For the
TJ's.
Shaw Apartments and some other assisted living places, we've gotten grants to be able to provide not only free tickets for them, but also transportation, which is always a barrier for, you know, some of our folks that live in lower income housing or they can't drive. So we've done that all of last summer, and we're doing that again this year as well.
and
So,
we did free movies for a while.
yep, we've had free movies. It's amazing. People don't, if you charge them $1, they'll come, but if you make it free, they don't. It's the weirdest thing. Yeah, it's so weird.
So, yeah, and on
So,
the,
that's a
on
good
the
idea.
increase in ticket prices, you know, years back when the state of Michigan increased the cigarette taxes, and it was a huge jump. But they figured, and they knew some people would stop smoking, or not go to the theater. But it's still a net gain, and that's, you know, without doing a big, huge MIT, probably not MIT, U of M study. We anticipate we're gonna have people that say, no, I'm done going to the theater. But those that continue to come will cover that loss plus some, is what we're anticipating.
Well, I know, I just
Yeah.
don't want people in the city of Whitehall to be, you know, eventually, you know, left without.
Well, and that's why we do offer those pay what you can, so anybody can come. And, you know, maybe that's something that needs to go out into our newsletter for the summer and letting folks know, hey, if you live in the city of Whitehall, make sure you take advantage of this. And that's not a limited number. Anybody, we could have 100 people come up and say, we want to pay you $1 at that show, and we would honor that. So,
A lot of good things.
Yeah.
I still like the idea of doing it basically city of Whitehall. The mayor could be up on the stage and welcome everybody.
I'll do that, I'm happy to do that. I love the Playhouse, I support the Playhouse. The city owns the Playhouse, and I think we should be supporting it. We're the envy of a lot of communities. They don't have a world-class Playhouse like we do.
Yeah, oh, I'm not unsupportive, I just want to make sure that it works.
We need to get a piano.
we're looking at that.
Just me, him being up there.
And we do have a good saxophonist.
Wow.
In the community.
Yes,
It's
we do.
been-
That is true. It was great. Good job.
All right.
Popping into sewer, we're looking at about a 200,
No, I don't want to.
Sorry.
We don't want to go in.
We don't want
We could jump in.
I said pop. $272,000 surplus. We do have a lot of capital needs coming up. Obviously, we've already mentioned Lake Street lift station and sewer main. We're recommending, because we feel we have some decent unrestricted funds, even in light, if we get that 2 million, now we're down to about $1 million worth of actual cost. But we're recommending no rate increase this year. And I think we've been running anywhere from 5 to 10%. So we're comfortable with no rate increase in sewer for this coming fiscal year.
What are unrestricted funds with respect to the sewer?
Well, for the most part, that just means cash, right, Alyssa?
Well, no, the unrestricted,
Yeah.
that is your infrastructure, and, yeah, no, sorry, that is, yes, that is your cash. We have our own investing.
Now sometimes there's, like in the Playhouse, we have unrestricted cash, but some of that is
That's
basically the
non-domain,
prepaid
yes, right.
pledges.
Yes, you have your infrastructure, and then, yes, the unrestricted would be your,
Yep. And Lori used to always want, because she was a purist from the CPA world, in her world, we would be 100% depreciation funded, which sewer, I don't know what their value is right now, their book value is 5 or 6 million. And I always told Lori, I said, that's not practical. And she said, well, if we ever have to replace the entire sewer system, we can do it with cash. And I said, that's exactly what I told her. I said, if there's ever a year where we have to replace the entire sewer system,
Something is
I'm out
going
of here.
really wrong.
Somebody shut off the lights.
We're moving to Montague.
Over on the water side, a little bit of a deficit, and we still have a lot of the lateral lines that we have to replace. I think there's some grumbling in Lansing that they're not happy with the pace that a lot of communities are going, and we're doing okay, and we can probably afford to do more. But you get into Grand Rapids and Flint, where it all started, and Traverse City, I mean, it would be financially impossible to pick up the pace. And I'm not even sure, and it was different levels depending on the size of the community. The smaller communities were supposed to do 10 years.
I know we're out at 2032, something like that. So we're trying to do about 40 a year, which I don't think we're gonna be able to do, which is above that 5%.
Yeah. But because of that, and with the fact that we have almost $2 million and less than $1 million in unrestricted, I think we gotta continue to increase the rate in water. And this is where we're at. We got the DWAM, which I love because government always has its own acronyms and own language. That's the Drinking Water Asset Management Plan. That'll be $30,000. That's much like the Street Asset Management Plan. We go through and we evaluate our entire system, and we kind of rate what water lines need to be replaced. I put power washing, and this coating, number 5 water tower,
Interior.
interior. It's not just bare metal on the inside. Power washing tower number 6, 8,500, which is not a big expense to, on a $1 million budget. But when the people start saying what's going on, you'll know that we're power washing it. It should be kind of obvious for a lot of residents, but it's good information to know. And the SCADA system, I know what that means.
Oh, the acronym?
Yeah, Brian.
I don't know.
Basically, it's a computer system that operates the wells. Because the water towers, with usage, as that level goes down, there's a computer system that reads over to DPW, which sends a signal to the wells to start pumping more water.
Keep the pressure up.
Yep, keeping the pressure up.
Can I ask which one is 5?
The one on Peach Street?
The red one.
Yeah.
Oh.
We have 2
Okay.
water towers, but we've had, I don't know where the other 4 went to, but
They got washed.
We don't need them.
They moved them out.
got rid of them. We're also looking at a
Future
backup
plans.
generator, which we found out this weekend is very
Oh,
valuable.
Lord, yes,
For those of you on the
valuable.
south end that lost power again for 3 or 4 days, that's a little annoying. And then the service line replacements. And we also, in addition to the 25 for the routine, whenever we're doing a water main, we include that in it, like Warner Street, we did all of them down on Warner Street. Over to the marina, I didn't color code it. We'll have about a $23,000 deficit, but we still have a pretty hefty unrestricted fund balance. And I'll still poke at the auditors, and this goes to auditors and financial people, that's $83,000 in depreciation, that's factored into that. So I try and ignore depreciation as much as I can. It makes me feel better at night. Motor pool, we're gonna have a big $431,000 deficit, but we will have $870,000 in unrestricted funds, because Brian's going on a shopping spree. I guess that's his on the way out the door present to the next guy or gal. But looking at his 6-year capital improvement plan, there's not a lot of demand, and I think a little bit in 6 and 7, and then it kind of drops off, because he'll have a lot of new toys out there. The loader debt, we've got 33 grand and 1 or 2 years left on that. We're pretty close to paying that off. And again, this is what we've done to kind of ease the burden. Instead of paying a couple of $100,000 for that loader, and with the squad cars, we buy them on a
Lease.
Amazon.
Can you imagine that truck, that box showing up at your house?
A lease with an option to buy is basically what it is. It's not really a loan. Yeah, and the interest tends to be a little bit lower because we can shop that around a little bit. Brian they need a new plow truck, which is almost $250,000. Once you get that fully assembled and fully geared up to hit the roads.
Wind or no wind?
No wind.
No wings. Sidewalk snow blower. What we've currently got is a small tractor with a snow blower attachment. And I think it broke down 3-4 times last year.
Pretty much all season.
It's just not enough meat for what we're using. So Brian's looking at buying a vehicle that is pretty much built to plow and snow blow sidewalks, so that we can probably do it in less time and have it on the sidewalks a lot more than in the shop. And then he needs 2 pickup trucks at about 154 grand combined for the cost of those. And motor pool's always the last thing to present. So any questions, comments? I know we have public comments, so I guess I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Those are 4-wheel drive trucks, right?
Yeah.
All-wheel?
Dump bodies.
Pickup trucks?
I don't know pickup trucks, but they're dump bodies.
Pardon me?
Are there any other questions or comments?
The last thing I want to bring up, and I don't know, missing the last council meeting, where the conversation really wants to go from here, but the flop cameras, I think the purchase is $600 a camera, $360 a camera,
I think it's 3,000.
$3,000 a camera? No,
Yeah. I think it's worth it.
To
$3,000 a
purchase,
camera?
to purchase,
And then the
right?
18,000 is the annual, right?
Give them
Okay,
to
that's
us.
where I'm getting those numbers.
Or something.
For a trial basis,
Oh,
right?
If they want, yeah.
Yeah, and they're not installed yet, but I guess I'd like to have that conversation either here or at a future council meeting, because I don't want that 60, get to the 61st day where we're unable to back out. I kind of scratched my head when Roger and Brandon brought that up. We did do a couple of live demonstrations. I've talked to, I think, pretty much every other city manager. Montague doesn't have any, but they swear by them. It probably will be a fantastic tool. I know there's been some incidences, actually with Brandon out there, when we had the arsonist torch, well, just one, because he got away quicker. He was actually able to go to a number of businesses and almost track them back to where he came from. With the flat cameras, that's a lot easier. It's kind of like lifetime data, and you probably already have the the speech, but apparently if somebody commits a crime in California and they know that they've got relatives in West Michigan, I think you can actually program it to send an alert when that vehicle shows up on one of the cameras. I think the sheriffs have got them, Muskegon, North Muskegon, Roosevelt Park's got them. Shelby has them. Yeah. So I don't know if that's a discussion for now. Obviously, it's a 60-day trial. If 60-day trial. If Brandon doesn't like them, we just back out of the contract. But if he does, then we're committed for the purchase of the cameras as well as the annual, I guess, software system.
What if we try out?
Subscription.
Sure.
Yeah.
What if we try out 6 and decide we want 1?
And we can, do
Yeah,
that.
you can
Yep, they
reduce
will
that.
allow us to do that. I mean, it's not a, they put up 6 for the demo period. It's not that we would be stuck with it. We could go to 3, or we could go to 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple, hopefully I can make them fast. One, wondered, are we doing any of the energy efficiency things that were on that for the different locations?
Nothing specific in this budget. I think we've done a handful of them. But some of the bigger items, I think we've done the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
But the bigger items are probably gonna have to wait for fiscal year.
Well, I think, I know some of them are gonna have an outlay, but eventually, the more that we do some of them, the more we're gonna save money. And I think, given our circumstances, we need to start and fix some of the next
Right.
priorities.
And without that storm, we probably could have done some of them here at City Hall.
Well, and then that was my next one, so what are we doing for storm prep? We already had two crazy ones.
For storm prep,
And where's the money gonna come from if we need it?
well, we still have available fund balances. But,
Knock on wood, we don't get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think financially, we're okay for a modest-sized storm.
Okay.
A big tornado comes through and it's gonna,
Let's not talk about it anymore. It might just fall on down to our areas. But I would like to see us start working on the energy efficiency. We were lucky to get an expert to
Yep.
provide all of that information, and I think we need to start moving beyond the low-hanging fruit, because I would like to see what our potential savings would be,
that was actually in the plan. They actually, I think Brooke gave them
Yeah.
2 years' worth of data, a big chunk. So there's actually the savings in that plan.
I'd like that to be made a little more accessible.
And Tanya, some of the larger expense items got put in our capital improvement plan.
Okay.
As well, like the solar and.
And I think all the council got a
Yeah.
copy of the full plan, right?
The full, yes, I mean, all of the 3 different buildings.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wonder if that could be made, if the actions could be pulled out, so it'd be easier to see them all listed and prioritized, what makes it, and the rationale. Then I have 2 more. When I was talking about the senior millage, I was asking Jeff Marcinkowski from Brooklyn about what they were doing, and he invited us to participate with their senior palooza. And we had a discussion about a senior palooza, and Virginia from the library said, that's really great, but if every municipality does one of those, it's really taxing because it brings all of the different organizations in, and that's a little hard for them. And so then Jeff said, why don't you join with ours? I mean, it's not that far away, Brooklyn Township. It's very popular, and I think they've had some ARPA money. And anyway, so I circled back with him, and, if we can put 1,000 in, our residents can go to that. There's a meal, there's a whole bunch of stuff, and I think we should be partnering. And it looks like with the, the current senior millage funds, it looks like we're getting $700 more anyway. I mean, the number we were working from was 17,245. So if it's 17,800, then we've got, you know,
A little more.
so basically we would just add $300 to that. I'd like to see us do that. I think it's an easy one for, you know, for us to do. And then one more, is the last one. I would love to see us donate $1,000 to community gardens. I know that was on the list as not, but it was like the 3,100, and I think we all supported the idea. And if we could even just donate $1,000 towards it, I think. Oh, and then I have one more, sorry. And I don't know where it's gonna come from, but these are little things. If we could squeeze them in. I think I'd like to see that happen. And $2,000 for student reps
Yeah.
from the high school. What if we asked them if they would share it with us? We put 1,000 in, they put 1,000 in, and, because
Who's the they?
the schools. Yeah, you had $2,000 for 2 reps.
I think they already have reps on their school board, or at least they used to.
No, reps for our city council.
Right, but I'm thinking, I mean, we could ask them, and the 1,000 was, we used to give a $500 scholarship, but I'm thinking inflation's gone up,
Yeah.
500 might buy,
I don't think so.
they don't even buy books, 2 books.
2 digital books.
2 digital book.
Chromebook.
Or maybe we start with one, but we get a lot of comment about engaging with youth, and I'd like to see us do that. And then that's kind of a cheap way to start engaging with the community and the age group we want to.
And the best loops.
I think the easy one for the garden, which is talking about, would be $1,000 in water, maybe. Just providing, if we were able to do that, I don't know if we are.
Well,
In kind, as you call it, I mean, whatever. that's-
I know she asked for water.
We can't do that.
Oh, we can't?
we could possibly put in the spigot,
That's what she asked.
and we wouldn't be given, and there's some discussion with Brenda, myself, and now I drag Brian into it. Because Will brought up, whether or not there's a lease or, what mechanism.
Yeah,
We got that crazy section in,
government, things like that. So,
Like I said, I like to see it happen, but we just need to have some parameters there. All parties understand what's allowed and what's expected.
yeah, absolutely. Were you gonna go ahead and add 300 for the senior palooza? Did people want to do that?
well, that would be when we get the actual funding, because I think it's normally February, where we get a notice as to what the actual funding is, and then that's when the city council would decide where that $17,000, $18,000 will go.
Oh, they're
And all we did was kind of tag what's already in there. The 17.8 is a revenue with some sort of like expense, but it doesn't have to go to
Their
those 4.
palooza is in June, and they invited us to, the clerk is gonna go to the board tonight and see if it's okay.
This June?
Yeah, yeah, we don't have to do anything but show up.
Yeah,
I mean, they've got the whole thing planned.
And the MC is pretty amazing.
Who is it, Pete?
Local community member Pete McCarthy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I would like to see us do that, because they're paying the major share, and they just said, yeah, you could pay 1,000 and partner, but she's gonna take it to her board tonight. And see if that number is okay.
The 300?
No, the 1,000.
Well, you said 300.
I know, because I was mistaken. Because when I saw your 17.8, I thought I was using that number.
So if they come back, they'll take $1,000 from the city of Whitehall for full participation,
Yeah, we could
then
just,
that would have to go to council.
okay.
And I don't know, I know we've had more than one conversation about the $1,000 going to the city. I don't know, that would be an easy one to give up and send to senior palooza. As long, yeah. People over 60 can go for free then, right?
Well, yeah, the seniors, all of our seniors would be able to go there, so, they might want more next year, we might as well take advantage while they're, but
Okay.
I think it's a nice partnership, we don't have to do anything but show up. Pay them a little money.
All right.
All right. If there's no further discussion, then we'll open it up for public comment. Any public comment?
All right, I will not be shy then.
All right.
So, real quick, I would like to say Rebecca Van Antwerp from 219 Country Club asked me to say something briefly on her behalf. She had to leave. And she wanted to designate her full support for law enforcement as far as the budget goes. She believes that you get what you pay for, and they live in the city specifically to know that they have those great services. And she also struggles with part-time because constantly retraining and losing them to other departments. She doesn't feel like that's the best use of the money. So that was Rebecca Van Antwerp from 219 Country Club. So those of you that don't know me, my name is Pete McCarthy. I have the honor of being the fire chief of the White Lake Fire Authority. I know me as well as a lot of you know me. I went ahead and prepared my statement because I can get a little long-winded, and out of respect for both Robert's rules and everybody's time, I just kind of wrote it down. You will find that there's a lot of rehashing. There's a lot of things that are very similar to what I said. So I'll agree that it's fiscally responsible to evaluate staffing levels and budgetary concerns every time you lose an employee through attrition. Times are always changing. We would be remiss if we just continue to do things the same way, because that's the way that we've always done them. But while I agree it's an important discussion to have, I caution anyone who wants to go backwards with their staffing model, especially in public safety in a growing community like ours. One of the hardest parts in the justification for positions is making sure that the community and the elected officials truly understand what the Whitehall Police Department does. A lot of people say that they'll just pull you over for speeding, or they just hassle you for a junk car in your yard, but there's so much more to community policing the way that Whitehall does it. And just the examples that pertain directly to the fire authority, these officers take great care of our community. I've shown up to multiple scenes in my career where officers of the Whitehall Police Department have been performing CPR on a patient in cardiac arrest, bandaging a wound, or controlling bleeding on a traumatic injury. They're always out assisting us with traffic control and vehicle accidents, not only to keep the people involved safe, but also my firefighters and the EMS providers. They respond to scenes where injuries are sustained through violence to secure them for the other first responders. They respond to lift assist when a community member has fallen and is uninjured but just needs help up. They block traffic also on incidents of downed power lines or other unsafe utility situations. They assist the fire department in forcing entry into homes when we need to get in and we're unable to. Administratively, they assist us in pre-employment background checks, citations for illegal burns, numerous investigations where we need a qualified law enforcement investigator, like for instances of suspected arson. Not to mention all the community events that we do right alongside them throughout the year: parades, student send-offs, 5Ks, athletic competitions, and the like. To lose a full-time position would be detrimental to the community that we serve and to the members of the police department, and also my department as well. Safety is paramount. Having 2 officers per shift allows them to more safely do their job. It also allows them to more promptly respond to calls from the community, as they can assist 2 citizens at once. Financially, you will find that any savings that you will see will most likely be taken up in overtime, paying out to the other full-time officers or part-time wages, but that also means you have to have more part-time officers on your rotation in which to handle it, all of which need to be uniformed and equipped to do that job, and that equipment is incredibly expensive. Also, those part-time officers will move on to full-time positions elsewhere, and that leads to the retraining and re-equipping of new employees constantly. All that I ask is that you truly evaluate the safety of all involved. If any potential savings ends up really being beneficial when you look at all sides, and understand that the Whitehall police officer is much more than just a cop. They are truly a public safety community official. We at the White Lake Fire Authority are grateful to have them and extremely proud to serve alongside them. That's all I have.
Thank you. All right. I guess unless anyone has anything further to say, thank you all for coming. Thank you to the department heads that presented the budget, Scott for laying it out for us. I believe the next step is the 27th, when we'll be voting on this.
That is correct.
With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.